Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Nobody. So what Nobody is essentially about is we center on the character of Hutch Mansell, and he is this guy who is at a point in his life where he's just feeling very much, he's feeling very sort of jaded with what he's doing. His life is in a very repetitive cycle. He's just not really enjoying the life that he really is following. But after a home invasion occurs, we start to realize that there's a lot more to Hutch than meets the eye. In fact, he might just be the guy to take out all of these criminals, as well as this drug lord that he eventually does have to now become the target of, but also try to protect his family and maybe get his life back on track overall. So, Nobody, I was definitely looking forward to this film. This looked like one of those films where, yes, it definitely has a lot of similarities to John Wick and things like that, but it seemed like it was going to be a lot of fun. It seemed like it's a film that could offer up some really fun action sequences, and in general, I think it's the kind of film that we kind of do need right now. We haven't really seen, action movies like this in a while, so I was really hoping this film could be something special, and it's fun. I definitely enjoyed Nobody for sure. I don't think this is an amazing film or anything, but overall, Nobody, I think, is a really good time, and I do think it is a film that a lot of people are going to enjoy for sure. It does feel a bit familiar in some areas, but I think there's a lot of things that definitely do work about it, so we're just getting to right now, though. Now, the one thing that definitely does elevate this film has to be the cast here. I think in general, everyone definitely does do a really good job, but it has to be said, this film really would not work as well as it is if it wasn't for the truly committed performance from Bob Odenkirk here, who I think is a performance that I don't think anyone would have ever expected him to give, because you look at Odenkirk and you see Saul. That's who you see. You see him playing someone like Saul, who's just really goofy and doesn't take things too seriously, and might be a little rough around the edges, but you would never expect him to play this character that can seriously kick your ass and is this hitman of sorts that, eventually ends up, taking down all of these guys. But Odenkirk really pulls it off in more ways than you really would expect him to. Not only did I hear that he got a lot of training from what he was, from having to play this role, but you really are convinced that he is this character. This is a guy that feels very unfulfilled, and you can see through doing what he's doing, it really gets him to start to enjoy himself more, start to turn his life around in a really good way, and I really liked what Odenkirk was able to do here. I think a lesser actor, this character would come across as very one-note and very derivative, but Odenkirk gives him a lot of layers, and he also makes him very likable in the role, that just in general, you're very convinced, and you're also very compelled by this character, and I think he did such a great job in just giving further layers to this character, really getting us to understand how this character thinks and feels, and I just really loved what he ended up doing here. I thought just in general, this was a really solid performance from him, and his performance alone, I think, is enough a reason to watch this film. In terms of the rest of the cast, everyone does do a really good job. Connie Nielsen is very good as his wife here. Riza is a lot of fun as his half-brother. We don't see him throughout a lot of the movie. A lot of the time, he's talking to him through this vent of sorts, but they do a lot of really fun stuff with him. But the one thing I definitely do have to give this film is that finally we have a great role for Christopher Lloyd here, who I don't want to spoil too much of what he does. He plays Hutch's father, who's in this care facility, but there is a lot more going on with him than you would think. In fact, he actually has the funniest scene of the entire movie. I was absolutely dying of laughter with what they decided to do with his character, but Lloyd also just seems like he is just having so much fun in this role, and it's great to see Christopher Lloyd in a movie that isn't shit. I feel like it's been a while since I've been able to say that, and I'm so happy that that's the case, because he really does go all out in this movie. He really does kill it here, and even though he is a lot older than he was in, say, like the Back to the Future films, he still very much does have it in him to pull off a role like this, and I thought he was just a lot of fun to watch here. They definitely did some really fun stuff with his character, and overall, I thought the acting here was pretty solid. But let's get into the directing, because the directing here, this is, of course, from the director of Hardcore Henry, a film that I enjoyed quite a bit. I thought it was really different and innovative, and with this film, I think Naishuller does do a really good job in making this film very propulsive, very fun. It's a film that doesn't take itself too seriously, and I think that's something that Naishuller does a really good job with. I very much did find myself enjoying a lot of this movie. The film also is surprisingly very funny at points. There's a lot of moments that very much did have me laughing, and I think that's really well done, but the film also does feel very intense at points. You find yourself getting really hooked in to what they're doing, and I think that's something that overall Naishuller as a director did a really good job with. I was very impressed by his directing throughout this film. I wish he would do more action movies, because he definitely does have it in him for sure. I think he definitely does have a specific talent for it. You know, films like this that are just super energetic and fun. You know, they're not trying to be anything more than it is, but I think that's really where he does shine. Just make fun, energetic, you know, just crazy action movies like this. I think he really does shine in doing that, and I think Nobody is just one of many examples of what he can really accomplish. So I hope we're able to see more from him, but the writing in this film, for the most part, is really good. I think the film does do a pretty good job in getting you to understand Hutch as a character. You understand that he's at a point in his life where he just isn't very happy with the way things are going, and you also understand that him turning into this this CIA assassin of sorts, now hunting down people and going after all these criminals, gives him a rush. It gives him a certain sense of purpose that he really hasn't had in a while, and it really does work for this character. I really liked what they were able to pull off here. I thought that it was definitely a lot of fun, but also getting to see what he really does get himself involved with. Yes, a lot of it is very coincidental, but it's very fun to watch, just seeing the lengths that Hutch is willing to go, which at first is something as simple as just a bracelet that his daughter has lost, but eventually turns into something much, much bigger than that. And I think they definitely did do a really good job with the writing in this film. I definitely found myself very invested in this story as a whole. I think that the writing was definitely a lot of fun. That being said, it also is the weakest issue of this. It also is the weakest part, I think, of this entire movie, because if you're coming to Nobody to look for a really good story and really well-written characters, you might find yourself a bit disappointed, because I did find the story overall to be a bit lacking here. Hutch as a character, we definitely do understand. We get the fact that, like I said, he's in a job that he just isn't very satisfied by. We get the sense that he is finally starting to feel a bit more fulfilled within his life. But other than that, we don't really know a lot. We know that his relation with Connie Nielsen is a bit rocky, but we don't know what led to this relationship. We don't know why they're at the point that they are. We just know that something has occurred, and since then, their relationship has really not been the same. And I think the film would have been that much better if we would have actually gotten to dive a bit more into that relationship, getting to see, where did Hutch go wrong? Because not only does he look at this new persona as, being this, being someone that hunts down all these criminals, he also sees it as an opportunity to reform his life, to get on better terms with his family, and I just never found myself all that invested in that part of the film, because I really didn't know too much about his family life. Why does Connie Nielsen feel the way she does? Why does he have such a horrible relationship with his son? We really don't know. The only relationship I found myself that attached to was the one with his daughter, and that's because she's the only one that doesn't really hold any resentment towards him, and they honestly do have a really nice bond. But other than that, we really don't know a ton about what's going on with his family life. And so I think that's something the film could have definitely dived into a bit more. I also think the film rushes into the interesting stuff just a little too early. We kind of montage through a certain aspect of Hutch's life that I would have liked to see a bit more of. You get the sense that he has this relationship with his boss, and we really don't get to see much of it. His boss is very hard on him. His coworkers don't really respect him. I would have liked to see more of that, so when he eventually does make that transformation from someone that is very defenseless and kind of cowardly to someone who is far more equipped to take on really anyone, I think it would have made it that much more entertaining and almost also that much funnier. I think there was more they could have done there that they really didn't. So I think that definitely does bring the film down, but the film also very much lacks when it comes to its villain. The villains in this movie are so cookie cutter and definitely something that really does bring this film down. They do have a really good opening scene with the main villain of this film where he's at this karaoke bar and he ends up doing something really horrible to this one guy that I'm not going to spoil because I couldn't believe they actually did it. But other than that, they really don't do a lot with him as a character. He feels much more like a plot device than anything, and you know eventually these two are going to confront each other, but it never feels like that confrontation is going to be anything that special because he really doesn't feel all that different from the other guys that Hutch has fought, other than this guy is like a drug lord and he's tied to something previous that Hutch did earlier in the film. So they really don't do that great of a job with establishing the villain here. Now, that being said, even though this villain himself is kind of whatever and feels very disposable, the actual climax of this movie is absolutely insane. When you actually get to see the way it plays out, I loved every second of it. I thought it very much was worth the wait, and I really liked what they ended up doing. I just wish the villain itself was a lot more well written than he was, because I do think there was some interesting stuff they could have done with him, but they really don't utilize him all that well. He has a really good introduction scene, but then he's kind of just in the background throughout the rest of the movie until eventually him and Hutch do have that confrontation, but it takes a while for that to happen, and I just wish they would have given him a bit more to do overall as a character. So, John Wick 2.0, this really isn't. In terms of the writing, I think it is definitely lacking in quite a few areas, but like I said, where it really does succeed is the cinematography here. The cinematography to this film is absolutely fantastic. All of the action sequences themselves, you really do get to see them play out to their fullest display. That subway fight that you saw in the trailer, you haven't seen the half of it. It is far more brutal than you really are expecting, and the film really does go all out with it, and I really did love that the film just didn't hold back. It was so relentless in just seeing him absolutely destroy these characters, and it was just really great to see. I loved what they ended up doing with the action sequences here. I think every single one of them are really well filmed. All of them are very memorable, and it's something that is definitely going to keep you very invested within this film. I think just in general, the cinematography and the action, the fight choreography, all of that definitely sticks out. It makes this film something very special for sure. I think the score to this film as well is really good. It's definitely one that is very memorable to me, but the soundtrack especially, there's a lot of great cues in this movie that really do work in terms of needle drops that they'll do, and I thought it really did work for this movie. I really enjoyed a lot of the songs they played throughout this film for sure, and the editing. I will admit, I do think this film is a little too short. I think there were certain things that the film could have dived into a bit more, but I never found myself bored with this movie. I never found myself taken out of what was going on. Even those things that I mentioned, they didn't completely hinder the film to where I didn't like it. I just wish we could have dived into it a bit more so the film didn't feel as disposable at points as it really does. Overall, like I said, while there definitely are moments of Nobody that feel a bit derivative and feel like they could have been dived into a bit more, I think there's a lot to really like about it. Bob Odenkirk gives such a convincing performance here. He is so badass as this character, and I really would like to see him take on more roles like this because he really does show how much more versatile he is than I think we have given him credit for over the years, and I really did love getting to see that. There are some truly dynamic and memorable action scenes that I think you're going to have a really great time with. There's some really fun moments throughout this film. The film is lacking in quite a few areas in terms of its story and especially in terms of its villain, but it really does make up for it in terms of the action sequences. It really does make up for it in terms of entertainment value, and overall is a film that I think you go into, you want to have a good time with it. I think you are going to. It's not the next John Wick or anything like that, but it definitely is a film that I very much had a very good time with, and I am going to give Nobody overall a B-. But over, guys, to my review of Nobody. Let me know what you guys saw of this movie. Left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.